Greetings all, and welcome to Lucas Brews. In today's video, we're going to be doing an inbox review of a rather unusual kit, the Tamiya 1/72 scale Henschel Hs129 B2. So I picked this kit because I'm a bit of a sucker for Eastern Front aircraft, especially German ones, and that is where this aircraft was used mostly, and also because it's one of my favourite aircraft from War Thunder, and I like to refer to it as the Hs129 Duck for, rather obvious reasons, I think. This kit's a bit unusual because you might be thinking, oh, I didn't know Tamiya did a tool of the Henschel 129, and you'd be right, they don't. It is in fact a tooling by Italeri from the 1990s. So without further ado, let's have a look at the Henschel 129 Duck. So starting out with the box, as you can see, it's pretty simple. You just have a picture of the finished model on a wooden desk, which, yeah, it looks alright, but a little bit plain to me. Personally, I prefer some more interesting box art, but that's just me. I do have to say though, it's probably one of the rare cases where you could potentially build the kit and it looks better than the box art, which is refreshing for a change. As you can see in the corner, it says plastic parts and decals made in Italy and other items made in Japan, and obviously that's because Italeri are actually the ones who made the tooling. Interesting though, I don't know, I guess that leaves only the instructions were made in Japan, given that the plastic parts and the decals are most of the kit. So, yeah, not much made in Japan. But anyway, so it's from 1996 originally, so it's a pretty typical Italeri tooling of that time period, as you shall see. And I guess both Revell and Tamiya happened to release the same set of sprues and a few different markings as part of their own range. So probably just part of Italeri broadening out, I guess, during the 90s and making it more accessible in Japan. Interestingly, I've seen a few of these kits knocking about in hobby shops sold as new. So yeah, I don't know when they discontinued this kit, but obviously they've been producing it for a while. Or at the very least, no one's been buying it for whatever reason. As you can see on the side here, we've got two different markings, I believe, S and K, and the details of which are in Japanese, so I can't really understand it, unfortunately. Repeat of the box art on the side there, a few close-up pictures of the model showing a few of the details, plus a little list of the paints you'll need, which is pretty damn handy, especially if you're starting out for the first time and not really sure what stuff you need to finish this kit. All the details are in Japanese, so if you don't speak Japanese, then you won't understand it really, other than the color guides codes. Nothing on the back of the box, which is pretty typical, so we might as well open it up and have a look at what you actually get inside of this box. So we have some instructions, pretty typical of Tamiya, with some nice little caricatures and some guides here. It's all in Japanese, and unfortunately I don't understand it, but I imagine it's a bit of detail about the history of the aircraft, plus some nice guides to the tools and painting guides. So it looks like a pretty beginner-friendly kit, especially if you speak Japanese. But I'll try and stop mentioning that point. I think it's pretty clear by now that I don't speak it, but yeah, as you can see though, you can still follow it relatively easily. Then we've got a single bag here containing all of the plastic parts and also the decals buried in there. Plus the clear parts appear to also be in the same sprue bag, kind of flinging around there. So we'll have a look at the instructions first, and then we'll have a look at the plastic. We've already talked about the front there. Opening it up, as you can see, it's in a fold-out format, which I'm not a big fan of because my model desk is pretty tight. However, I suppose you can easily do this, and it's not as much of an issue. Starting out, we have a basic assembly for the cockpit with a seat, a control column, and a instrument panel. Looks like there's no decals included because there is a painting guide that says to paint the instrument panel grey and the dials black. So yeah, pretty basic looking interior, but you can't really see an awful lot through the windows anyways. Then we've got a sight that gets stuck on the outside there, I think. That's not super clear, but there's a part that goes there. Then we've got a tail wheel, and once you've assembled the cockpit, you slip it inside, and then you can join the two fuselage halves. Oh, I see, it's part of the cannon barrel, so can't quite see it as clearly on that side, but on this side you can, and there's a little insert here for one of the cannons. Then you've got wings. You've got a bottom half which you can stick to the fuselage half, then two top wings, plus a horizontal stabilizer for each side there. Then we've got engine nacelles, which come in two pieces, and a little cannon pod for the underside there. Flipping over, once you've installed the wings and that, you can then add on a little rack here for attaching the cannon pod, I'd imagine. Plus you've got struts here for the landing gear, some pretty nice big oleo ones, and a few little bomb racks on the outer wings, and a little bit of detail here with a, looks like a radiator cooler or something on the back here of the wings. Following this, you then install the wheels onto the struts, plus you've got, looks like a bit of detail for the inside of the cannon there, so maybe you can leave the fairing off and have a little bit of detail there, although I suspect it is pretty basic, but possibly something you could do with this kit, especially if you wanted to upgrade it. Then you've got some little parts here for holding the bombs to the racks. Following that, you install the fairing for the cannon and the landing wheel, the landing bay doors. On the other side here, we have the engine assembly. So as you can see, there's a little bit of detail here for the radial engines, which you install into the two halves of the cowlings. Then you've got a plastic washer here to hold in place the propeller, which you attach the spinner hub and the spinner itself to. And looks like you do this assembly twice for each side, or pretty similar parts anyways. Then the final parts that you add on are the exhausts coming out the back of the cowlings there. You've got the distinct gun sight, which is on the outside of the Henschel. The cockpit section here with a little mirror by the looks of things for rearward visibility. Then you've got some antennas and the engine installation. So yeah, looks like a relatively basic kit, but looks like there's a few little nice points of details. I'll be very interested to see what they look like on the plastic. But yeah, we've got two different marking options by the looks of things. This one, I believe, is finished in a standard RLM 70 and 71 finish with 65 undersides. Given that pretty much all the Henschels were used on the eastern front, I'd imagine that is a yellow identification band. But yeah, pretty typical looking camouflage, and it's got, I believe, a yellow nose, which I will probably have to do. And then the second scheme included is in a slightly different winter scheme here. So again, you'd start with the 70 and the 71 and then apply the winter wash coat over the top of it. It's going to be a bit challenging, I think, to decide which one I want to do, because I think they look great on both aircraft. Either way though, they have a yellow nose, which I'm happy with, because when it has a yellow nose, I think it looks like a duck. But yeah, anyways, that's the instructions aside. Let's have a look at the plastic parts. So we'll open up the single bag. I have to say I'm a little bit unhappy that they've put the clear parts in one bag, and the decals as well, because they can shift around and quite easily get damaged by, well, these parts can get scratched, or the clear parts can get scratched, and these can get damaged by the sprues as well and have all of the decals get chipped. But fortunately, they seem to be fine. Might as well have a quick look at them. I believe they said that these were made in Italy, so they should be of decent quality. I'm not much of a fan of Tamiya's decals, if I'm being honest. But yeah, they're pretty basic as well. Looks like we've got the standard Balkan Kreuz, and then for each aircraft, some individual squadron markings. We do have a little first aid symbol plus one of the B9s, so telling, I think, which fuel type is used, or it might be the oil type, I can't quite remember. And then we've got some of the dials, or instrument dials, which would actually go on the outside of the engine, which is an interesting feature, I think, of the Henschel. But yeah, so that's decals aside. Here we've got the clear parts, and as you can see, quality on them is not really the best. Although they've done a decent enough job doing a sort of texture for the frames, so you can easily paint them. Yeah, they do kind of distort a little bit, and they are quite thick. But honestly, you don't really see an awful lot into the Henschel, because a lot of this is armoured glass, and it's pretty small windows anyways. So yeah, decent enough job on the canopies. I think they're perfectly serviceable. And as for the main sprues, we'll start off with the wings here. And as you can see, thank God, we have some recessed panel lines, which look pretty good. But there's also a few mixed raised details and some very nice guiding marks here for the engine nacelles. So yeah, I honestly think that looks pretty good. Interestingly, for the ailerons, on the underside at least, they've only moulded the control linkages and then a little bit of the underside. So there will be quite a massive gap between the ailerons and the underside of the wings, which that might be quite accurate actually. So I think that looks interesting. I'm excited to see how it looks when it's assembled. So yeah, pretty good. Not a lot of flash or anything really on this sprue either, which is also a plus. On the upper surface, as you can see, the ailerons are still attached to the wings, and it's just sort of recessed details. A little bit of flash here, but nothing too much that can't be sanded. And all of the details, again, are recessed panels. And yeah, they've done a really nice job with the panels, as well as all of those little access hatches and filler caps. I quite like the detail that they've gone to on this one. It's pretty decent, actually. Better than I was expecting originally. For the horizontal stabilizers, they've done a nice fabric texture, which looks nice and rough and soft in some spots too, in terms of the sagging. But the texturing also looks quite good. And then a few little recessed details on the metal parts. Underside also looking pretty good. Looks like they've done a little bit of an access hatch for perhaps the control linkages or cables that run through there. So yeah, it looks pretty good. Here we have our cannon barrel, and it looks like, I think on the original Italeri they had the much larger 75mm, whereas this looks like, I think, the 37. So a shame they didn't include it, if that was a thing. But, oh well, at least you do get this nice big cannon, and yeah, it's rather basic. I know that this was a rather interesting looking muzzle brake on the original, but yeah, otherwise though, detailing looks decent. I don't think you could get away with leaving this off and having this as the interior detailing for the cannon. It might be a little bit basic, but oh well, it's still pretty decent, and at least they've done some nice recessed rivet detailing on the cannon's fairing. Then we've got the landing gear doors. They've actually done a bit of recess detailing on the inside of them, although unfortunately there are a few ejector pin marks in some annoying spots there, which will have to get cleaned up. But honestly, they look pretty good. Here we have our engines, and they're actually really, really tiny. But I think the French Gnome Rome engines that these planes were using were quite small and terribly underpowered, I think, really. But yeah, the detail looks quite nice on them. You can see that all the cylinder heads are detailed, and there's a bit of wiring. Not massive, but still pretty decent, I think, honestly. And the cowlings also look pretty good. They've done some nice texturing there for the intakes there. A mix of recessed and some raised details on the cowlings there. And as you can see, one of them's fallen off as it was getting pulled out, but honestly, they're pretty solid. So yeah, looking good. Spinners there, a little bit of flash on the corners there, but nothing that can't be cleaned up. And looks like some more parts for retaining the propellers and then the base of the spinner hub. Plus we've got a little pitot tube there, which, yeah, looks pretty decent. So yeah, not too bad for this sprue. And here we have our second sprue with the fuselage halves. I have to say, there's a lot of empty space on this sprue. I don't know quite why they've done it that way. Maybe it's because they wanted it to be the exact same size for both sets of sprues, to maybe make it a little bit less likely that parts will get damaged. So I appreciate it if that's why they've done it. That's pretty good thinking, really. Otherwise, perhaps there's some other versions of the Henschel from Italeri which later on used up this empty space, perhaps, as I've said, for a different armament setup. But yeah, very large sprue, really, for the number of parts. We'll start off with this fuselage half, and as you can see, some very nice recessed detailing for all these access hatches and the panel lines. A few raised areas here as well, which look quite good. The Henschel is a very bulgy looking aircraft, I think, and I think looks like they've done it pretty accurately there with all the armoured panels and bits and pieces on it. The barrels here for the cannons, they're pretty basic. They've sort of done the ridges where the barrels would have come out. But I don't think they've actually drilled out the holes there by the looks of things, although there was a small part, I believe, that was for the cannons, so that might have added the hole there. But yeah, not too bad. Unfortunately, no real detail on the inside. There's just some guide marks or ridges here to help line up the cockpit when you install it. Speaking of which, we've got the cockpit floor here, pretty basic. Looks like there's some very small rudder pedals, but they look a bit underscaled. Otherwise, there's just some marks here to help line up the seat and the control column. Here's the seat, and unfortunately there's a fair bit of flash on it, and it, worst of all, has a very annoying ejector pin mark right in the middle there that would be very difficult to clean and in a very visible spot, so that doesn't look like it's the best. Looks like we've got some other small radiators here of some kind for the wings, I believe, which, yeah, they look pretty decent. Then we've got the wheels here, which they've got some nasty ejector pin marks on them as well on the rear of them. On the other side, though, yeah, looks a lot better. but the tire tread pattern's very exaggerated, I think. But at least it goes the whole way around, and the seam line isn't very strong on them, so yeah, they don't look too bad, but maybe a little bit exaggerated. Tail wheel looks pretty good. Control column, there's a little bit of like a sink mark in them, but otherwise they're not too bad. Not too sure. Oh, this must be the gun sight. Yeah, that's the gun sight. Doesn't look too good, I got to admit. There's some raised details here, but on the other side they are absent. So not sure if that's intentional, but yeah, the gun sight looks pretty basic. But I suppose that is a pretty tricky part to get right. So maybe I'll 3D print or replace it. Yeah, but oh well. Then we've got the mirror here, which is pretty thick, but oh well. Again, that's probably a tricky part to do any better than that, especially in the 90s. Here we've got our instrument panel, and I'll try and get closer. It's absolutely tiny, really. But as you can see, they've done raised circle kind of rings for the dials. So maybe with a little bit of painting and some dry brushing, you can get a decent result, but unfortunately they don't look too good. However, they are quite deep, I think, inside of the fuselage, so you probably won't notice too much of them, really. Then we've got perhaps some cannons or some other attachment of some kind, and a massive antenna there. Looks pretty thick. So yeah, they look like they're pretty decently done. Here we have the struts for the landing gear, and as you can see, they've done some nice recessed and raised details for the various parts on it. There's a few little sink marks here and there, but they don't seem to be in places that are too obvious, so that's yeah, pretty decent there. Prop blades here for the engines, they look pretty good as well. There's a tiny bit of flashing on the tips of the blades, and these blades look a little bit like they're quite tricky to remove from the sprue there. That's going to be a little bit annoying, but otherwise though, the rest of the props look pretty good. Here we've got the cowlings, or fairings, for the nacelles, I should say, for the engines. Again, recessed panel lining, all looks pretty decent, and there's no flashing other than a few little spots here and there that can't be cleaned up. And yeah, inside, no real detail, but you probably won't see too much of that anyways. And then we have our other fuselage half here, and it's got the tail. Same story as the horizontal stabilizers. Really nice job with some fabric texturing, which looks quite good. And the rest is all recessed details, which, yeah, all look pretty good. There are a few little bits and pieces with some flashing, but nothing that can't be sanded. And here we have the exhausts, by the looks of things, these kind of parts that stick out. And they have done an attempt to sort of drill them out, which doesn't look half bad. And it looks like some of the cannon barrels, which are actually drilled out, so they look good. I think they've only got 2 when there would have been 4, so a bit of a shame that they don't include a set for this barrel as well, but it might have been a little bit deeper sunk inside of there, so oh well. They've done a decent job at least with the second barrel, and then it looks like these are the racks for the outer wings, and here are some extra attachment points. I've just realised though, they don't actually include any bombs or fuel tanks or anything for the outer drop points that go on the wings. So yeah, I don't know why they've bothered including them. I'm imagining some Henschels had them removed if they weren't carrying anything, but otherwise, yeah, a bit of a shame they didn't include some extra bombs and fuel tanks. So that pretty much sums up having a look at the Tamiya, or perhaps more accurately, the Italeri Henschel 129B2. So, yeah, honestly, for what I paid, which was about $18, it's a pretty solid kit. Some very nice recessed panel lines, and a few details look pretty good. However, it is definitely showing its age, and yeah, I think it would be nice if we could get a more modern Henschel 129 tooling in 1/72 scale. I don't think there are any other options, really, besides the Airfix one that I know of, and perhaps there's a Frog or a Heller or something like that. But all of those kits are a lot older, and are probably going to have raised details, and even less inside of the cockpit. So honestly, I think if you want this kit and want to do a good job, you're going to have to do a fair bit of work to upgrade it, maybe 3D print a few parts, which is something I'm kind of tempted to do with this one. But out of the box, I reckon you can still get a pretty decent looking Henschel 129, as the box art proves. And yeah, it's great to be able to grab one of these rather unique and I would say forgotten aircraft, but I think thanks to War Thunder, as I've mentioned, it is a little bit more recognized. I'll be doing a build video on this one eventually. Not too sure when I'll start it, but keep your eye out. Maybe in the next year I will manage to get it done. There's a fantastic video by I Hope You Learnt Something talking about the history of the 129, and it's pretty fascinating. I would recommend this kit if you're after one of these aircraft in this scale, as yeah, it's kind of one of the only options really, and it seems to be relatively easy to get the Italeri or Tamiya one. And if you look on ScaleMates, I believe not only has Italeri added extra parts in the future, so that might be for the B1 with the massive 75mm cannon, but they also looks like going to reissue their tooling of it. So this same tooling, or at least a similar one, but with some more modern decals. So I think that'll be a pretty welcome addition. I might have to get that and try it out as well when it arrives. If you're interested in this subject, then yeah, definitely one you have to grab, I reckon. So I hope this video was helpful to those interested in this kit. If it was, please be sure to leave a like, and also subscribe to the channel. It really helps out. And a big shout out, as always, to my wonderful patrons for helping me fund buying these kits and the products that I use to make them. I'll be doing a build video on this one eventually. It might be a little while before I get around to it, but I wanted to do an inbox review while I had it, and as a little bit of filler while I'm working on some other projects. So, thanks again for making it this far, and as always, take care, and until the next video, model on.